fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. What am I doing with my life? You know, that's the question we ask ourselves when we start comparing ourselves with people who have seemingly gone ahead of us. Are you probably comparing your own beginning to their middle because you do not even know what predates their life before they got to that particular point? The media attempts to sell you hope. It loves overnight success because it gives you hope. It gives you, I can keep coming and then seeing that people are succeeding and all of that. That's what the media attempts to do. There is nothing like overnight success. It's actually a big problem that it has actually caused because a lot of people now have unrealistic expectations of themselves. You're probably not behind. And it's not only okay, but you're where you exactly need to be and when you're meant to start making moves to eventually reap my own. So today we would actually be talking about how you're not behind. You're just comparing your own chapter 1 to their chapter 20. The first point is actually that their overnight success took 10 years that you don't see. You just watch the 21-year-old get a fully funded sponsored scholarship to study in Stanford in the United States of America. Then you went back through Twitter and then you just see the entrepreneur say that they just acquired another firm, 23 years old. And you're asking yourself, what am I doing with my life? You know, that's the question we ask ourselves when we start comparing ourselves with people who have seemingly gone ahead of us. And then the problem with that question is that it doesn't just affect us psychologically. It tempts us to say that we're actually behind. But what if you're not just behind, but you're not looking at things the way you're meant to look at it? You're not looking at it objectively enough. Are you probably comparing your own beginning to their middle because you do not even know what predates their life before they got to that particular point? You know, we live in the highlight reel era, right? You can watch YouTube shorts of people who just made it now, or you can just randomly see it on their WhatsApp status to say that, see, I'm flying to California and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The media attempts to sell you hope. It loves overnight success because it gives you hope. It gives you, I can keep coming and then seeing that people are succeeding and all of that. That's what the media attempts to do. But what you don't know is actually that it's actually a controlled part to make you look at yourself and say that I want to do this, even when you're probably not ripe to do it. And it's actually a big problem that it has actually caused because a lot of people now have unrealistic expectations of themselves. But every person who you actually see that they actually achieved that feat, they've had mountains and mountains of failures that you do not even know. And some people have actually done things that are unspeakable, that by your own convictions and ideals, you might not even be able to do them. So, are you still behind or you're just exactly where you're meant to be? You know, one of the things I actually believe so much is that you're probably not behind. And it's not only okay, but you're where you exactly need to be. And when you're meant to start making moves or when you're meant to start, it's not even that you're not going forward, but when you're meant to eventually hit that point that you've seen on social media, you would eventually know that, come on, I've become this kind of thing that I've always celebrated people for. And it's just time for me to eventually reap my own. So today we would actually be talking about how you're not behind. You're just comparing your own chapter 1 to their chapter 20. So if you've been here long enough, I just want you to kindly smash the subscribe button. It means that you value this post up to this moment, right? And really, you can also like, and then we'll talk about talking to ourselves in the comments before we are done. The first point is actually that their overnight success took 10 years that you don't see. The tech founder that raises $50 million, the guy that hits about 1 million views, the partner in your office that is at the pinnacle of his work and then can tell people to do this, right? That guy that everybody suddenly recognizes, right? It took 10 years of incredible work. Now, 10 years in this part, it's not even speaking only to that calendar 10 years. And the problem we often make is that you don't look at 10 years like this, such that people can start out much more better than you. They didn't do anything. Their foundation is just better. For example, they lived in country that encouraged that kind of stuff. For example, they went to the best of schools that already set them on their path. For example, their family is very, very rich and then they have a lot of inheritance. You do not even know that, but then you suddenly bring their story side by side with yours and then you believe that you're actually making a mistake. You're not. You're just exactly where you're meant to be. And then let's even talk about those that have used the whole 5 calendar years, 10 calendar years. I mean, the guy that you're probably seeing today that has done very, very well. Let's take athletes, for example. They run for about just 10 seconds or 400-meter sprints, right? But they've been training their whole life for it. But you just watch them on the stage. You never know what they've eventually been through. So what I want you to start doing now is I don't want you to just compare what you see, what everyone sees. I want you to drill down a little bit to say, what has this person done to achieve this? And then it suddenly gives it perspectives. So that particular author that all of us loves She probably wrote 10 rejected novels that nobody even looked at her side. The point is, there is always a work behind every overnight success. And I do not want you to believe that there is anything called overnight success. Because the first thing is that you kill the mentality of overnight success. There is nothing like overnight success. So yeah, it's actually time for journal. And just one question really, it's not multiple questions. What overnight success have I been comparing myself to? You want to be like Elon Musk? Very good, but does Elon Musk's success actually make you depressed? Then you're comparing yourself to him. So once you write it down, I do not want you to compare yourself to Elon Musk again. The second thing is that have you paid your dues? Now, you want results without reps. You want the confidence without the failure that comes with it. You want the expertise without having to put in years and years and years of experience. Have you heard about the 10,000 hour rule, such that the people who have mastered their craft have to go through a routine learning about that specific thing for like 10,000 hours? Have you even done something up to that? Because every expert was once a disaster, but until they started practicing again, they never got to the point where they got to now. You see, my point about this, or what I'm eventually pitching to you, is actually that you do not need to worry about other people's success. You just need to keep refining whatever you're doing. If you're a photographer, please keep refining what you're doing. You could be a global photographer, but you have to do it again and again and again. There are times that you're just going to work and nobody's going to remember that you did anything. And there are days when you're going to work and then everybody's going to say that, come on, this is like one of the best pieces I've ever seen in my life. You have to consistently work at it. You do not have to say that, oh, 3 people do not like what I do. And then, you see, the goal is eventually to do so much that you've improved so much. Again, the goal is essentially that you've done so much that you've improved so much. I want you to stop being frustrated that you are not where they are. And I want you to start being contented that at least you know where you are, and then you can start making practical plans, practical steps, you can start taking practical steps to eventually face a direction that you want to be, not where they are already, right? That you want to be. And it's all about preparing. I mean, wherever you are that you do not like is just a clue to tell you that you should keep preparing to eventually be where you really feel that you want to be. Your dues are not punishment, they're actually preparation. So you have to pay your dues. You can't get the confidence without having to be put down here or there, one here. Everybody eventually trades failures for success because there is no success without failure, right? And that is what I want you to really do now. Again, journal time. And what I want you to write is, what dues am I actually trying to avoid? Because if you are actively trying to avoid paying your dues, what that great place is actually going to look at you is just going to be an illusion, because you're never going to actually get there if you're avoiding to pay your dues, because you know exactly what would happen if you pay your dues. You know, the third point now is that there's an equation I came up with, right? Patience plus work equals your unfair advantage. And it makes me remember that quote by Bruce Lee that says that, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. You see, patience is not passively waiting, it's actually active persistence. Everybody's actually looking for shortcuts, hacks. How would I do this in like 2 months, things that we put in 4 years. And it's one of the things that has sabotaged ideals and convictions in our age. But I mean, when you're patient, people often think that you're patiently doing nothing. You're actively doing. It's just that you're showing up when the results are not visible. You're consistently working. It's that you're trusting the process when the process doesn't make sense. When eventually when in itself the process feels pointless to actually trust. It's working on your own particular craft when no one is watching, but with the assurance that one day, tens of thousands of them are actually going to gather to watch you. That's patience in itself. The person who sticks with something for 5 years and then does it very, 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 very well, it's much more better than somebody who just does something and springs something up in 1 week, because you've taken time to eventually set standards and foundations and all of that, right? Everybody, again, most of us in our generation wants to just do things very fast and then get out of the scene and do this. The goal is not to get there only. The goal is to get there and to be able to stay there, right? People who eventually take their time, and I have to say this very slowly, people who eventually take their time, they develop judgment that comes from experience. They know do's and don'ts. They already experience what it looks like to do something that is very shabby, and they know what quality and excellence, what it looks like. You see, there is a way to get your competitive advantage up, and one of the ways to do it is that you're long in the game and you know how exactly the game is played. You know how exactly people cheat the game. You know how exactly people excel in the game. When you're there, you become mastery. Patience is the price you pay for mastery. Patience is actively doing, is actively showing up, is active persistence. Again, the game isn't about getting there first. It's about getting there and then you're staying there. You don't want to be the guy that gets there today, you're known for this today, and tomorrow, where is he? We can't even hear his voice. The game is long term. It's a marathon. Life is marathon. Success is marathon. You comparing your chapter 1 to their chapter 20 on your own hand is you wanting to play the long-term game for you to get to your own chapter 20, right? And that's essentially what your video is about. Long-term, marathon. Think long-term. Think 20 years old now. I'm thinking 40 years old. What do I want to look like when I'm 40? Don't think 22, don't think 23. That's too short term, right? And you actively show up playing that game. Again, journal time. What are you building that would eventually matter in 5 years? What do you think you're currently learning? What is the skill that you know that if you sit on it, you're going to be very good in 5 years? Don't forget the 10,000 hour rule. I think 10,000 hour rule takes about 10 years. But when you're 5 years into it, people can eventually know that you've mastered it. So finally, I want you to stop asking, what am I doing with my life? Essentially, stop asking it. And then start looking at your life in terms of chapters, right? Chapter 1 is probably teaching you to begin. Chapter 5 is telling you to persist. Chapter 10 is telling you you can adapt. Chapter 15 is teaching you to lead, right? Just follow your own timing. And that's exactly where you need to be. So if you have some more time, you can just write what your chapter 1 looks like. But I mean, just write, hey, what are the things that I've done with my life? Because you've definitely done something with your life, right? If you're in school, that's something you're doing with your life. If you graduated, that's something you're doing with your life. If you didn't go to school and you've attempted your hand at, let's say, bricklaying, carpentry, furniture, barbing, that's something you're doing with your life because people excel from there. And your version of success doesn't have to be someone else's version of success. Finally, to say that in the comment section, I just want you to tell me that person that you really feel you want to be like today. And you already have a shift in ideas now. For example, some of us is Elon, some of us is Dangote, some of us is $1, right? But you already know that you can admire them while eventually you start to live your life. Finally, again, you're not behind, you're not late, you're not failing, you're just getting started. And that's the most exciting place to eventually be because there is so much more things to actually unlock. Again, every master was once a disaster who kept going, and then they actually became the best version of yourself. Please subscribe, and then we meet again in the next episode till we all win. Thank you.